Beecham availed himself of Albert's permission, and left him, promising to call for him at 8:15. On his return home, Albert expressed his wish to Franz de Bray and Morel to see them at the opera that evening. Then he went to see his mother, who since the events of the day before had refused to see anyone, and had kept her room. He found her in bed, overwhelmed with grief at this public humiliation. The sight of Albert produced the effect which might naturally be expected on Mercedes. She pressed her son's hand and sobbed aloud, but her tears relieved her. Albert stood one moment speechless by the side of his mother's bed. It was evident from his pale face and knit brows that his resolution to revenge himself was growing weaker. "My dear mother," said he, "do you know if M. de Morcerf has any enemy?" Mercedes started. She noticed that the young man did not say "my father." "My son," she said, "persons in the Count's situation have many secret enemies. Those who are known are not the most dangerous. I know it, and appeal to your penetration. You are of so superior a mind, nothing escapes you." "Why do you say so?" "Because, for instance, you noticed on the evening of the ball we gave, that M. de Monte Cristo would eat nothing in our house." Mercedes raised herself on her feverish arm. "M. de Monte Cristo!" she exclaimed, "and how is he connected with the question you asked me?" "You know, mother, M. de Monte Cristo is almost an Oriental, and it is customary with the Orientals to secure full liberty for revenge by not eating or drinking in the houses of their enemies. "Do you say M. de Monte Cristo is our enemy?" replied Mercedes, becoming paler than the sheet which covered her. "Who told you so?" "Why, you are mad, Albert. M. de Monte Cristo has only shown us kindness. M. de Monte Cristo saved your life, you yourself presented him to us." "Oh, I entreat you, my son, if you had entertained such an idea, dispel it, and my counsel to you, nay, my prayer is to retain his friendship." "Mother," replied the young man, "you have especial reasons for telling me to conciliate that man." "I?" said Mercedes, blushing as rapidly as she had turned pale, and again becoming paler than ever. Yes, doubtless, and is it not that he may never do us any harm? Mercedes shuddered, and, fixing on her son a scrutinizing gaze. You speak strangely, said she to Albert, and you appear to have some singular prejudices. What has the Count done? 3 days since you were with him in Normandy, only 3 days since we looked on him as our best friend. An ironical smile passed over Albert's lips. Mercedes saw it and with the double instinct of woman and mother guessed all, but as she was prudent and strong-minded she concealed both her sorrows and her fears. Albert was silent. An instant after, the Countess resumed. You came to inquire after my health. I will candidly acknowledge that I am not well. You should install yourself here, and cheer my solitude. I do not wish to be left alone. Mother, said the young man, you know how gladly I would obey your wish, but an urgent and important affair obliges me to leave you for the whole evening. Well, replied Mercedes, sighing, go, Albert, I will not make you a slave to your filial piety. Albert pretended he did not hear, bowed to his mother, and quitted her. Scarcely had he shut her door, when Mercedes called a confidential servant, and ordered him to follow Albert wherever he should go that evening, and to come and tell her immediately what he observed. Then she rang for her lady's maid, and, weak as she was, she dressed, in order to be ready for whatever might happen. The footman's mission was an easy one. Albert went to his room, and dressed with unusual care. At 8:10 Beecham arrived. He had seen Chateau Renaud, who had promised to be in the orchestra before the curtain was raised. Both got into Albert's coupe, and, as the young man had no reason to conceal where he was going, he called aloud. To the opera. In his impatience he arrived before the beginning of the performance. Chateau Renaud was at his post, apprised by Beecham of the circumstances. He required no explanation from Albert. The conduct of the son in seeking to avenge his father was so natural that Chateau Renaud did not seek to dissuade him, and was content with renewing his assurances of devotion. Debray was not yet come, but Albert knew that he seldom lost a scene at the opera. Albert wandered about the theatre until the curtain was drawn up. He hoped to meet with M. de Monte Cristo either in the lobby or on the stairs. The bell summoned him to his seat, and he entered the orchestra with Chateau Renaud and Beecham. But his eyes scarcely quitted the box between the columns, which remained obstinately closed during the whole of the first act. At last, as Albert was looking at his watch for about the 100th time, at the beginning of the second act the door opened, and Monte Cristo entered, dressed in black, and, leaning over the front of the box, looked around the pit. Morel followed him, and looked also for his sister and brother-in-law. He soon discovered them in another box, and kissed his hand to them. The Count, in his survey of the pit, encountered a pale face and threatening eyes, which evidently sought to gain his attention. He recognized Albert, but thought it better not to notice him, as he looked so angry and discomposed. Without communicating his thoughts to his companion, he sat down, drew out his opera-glass, and looked another way. Although apparently not noticing Albert, he did not, however, lose sight of him, and when the curtain fell at the end of the second act, he saw him leave the orchestra with his two friends. Then his head was seen passing at the back of the boxes, and the Count knew that the approaching storm was intended to fall on him. He was at the moment conversing cheerfully with Morel, but he was well prepared for what might happen. The door opened, and Monte Cristo, turning round, saw Albert, pale and trembling, followed by Beecham and Chateau Renaud. "Well," cried he, with that benevolent politeness which distinguished his salutation from the common civilities of the world, "my cavalier has attained his object." "Good evening, M. de Morcerf,"